I don't know if I told you all this, but I don't really shoot weddings anymore.
Here to show up and show out. Here to show up and show out. What? Here to show up and show out. Here to show up and show out. Yeah.
And so
Here to show up and show out.
that is, of course, going to be today's topic. Is just talking through why I don't shoot weddings as much and why I pivoted to the corporate space. And so the biggest thing is when I look at weddings, the truth is I love them. They're great. People are nice. They are, of course, a great time. However, I was getting older. And as I'm getting older, I realized that I needed to make a pivot. I needed to make a shift because my clients were getting younger. I was starting to get a little bit older. And I realized that no matter how many weddings I shot, I was always exhausted. But then also there was a moment that I realized that one year we had 50 weddings, another year we had 30. And then after that, we went down to about 20 weddings. And I realized that the referral base was going to be a little bit different. And granted, yes, people are always referring you out. People are always talking about how much they love you. But that age gap starts to change. And so I realized that I wanted to be in a space that allowed me to be able to shoot consistently. And my age really didn't matter. My team's age didn't really matter. And the work was always consistent. And that was in the corporate space. And so being in the corporate space, I've understood and learned the idea of how people think, what they're looking for. And so I said, let's add that same idea and that same mythology to how I shoot. And so for me, I shoot photography and videography, but my heavily focused over the years was videography. And I said, how about I take the creative space of shooting from what I shot within weddings and add that splash, I guess you could say, into the corporate space. And so that's exactly what we did. And so over the last couple of years, we've pivoted heavily in the corporate space, and we shoot mostly corporate events. We shoot with a lot of associations, and we also shoot a lot of headshots. And then of course on the side when we are of course on our down season, we do a lot of heavy branding. So whether that's social media marketing, whether that is continued content marketing, whatever that looks like, is where we do a lot of our extra work. But in that, what we do from a corporate space, of course, translates well into that. Now, the question is, how do I get there? How do I get there? And I think the biggest thing is understanding that you pivot. You pivot and you make a choice to pivot. I wouldn't say niche down because, yes, some people are big on niching down into doing headshots only or doing only events. I think you're limiting yourself when you do that. But what I will say is be clear, direct on your website on what you do shoot. And so what I did a complete overhaul of my website and I took down every wedding. I took down every portrait. I took down every family. You can't find that on my website. What you find on my website is corporate. Now, what I did do is I still kept back end areas on my site. So, for example, if you wanted portraits during the holiday season, because our company is named after my grandmother, we do portraits for families during holidays such as Mother's Day, Father's Day, as well as also our big two, which is of course in November and December for Thanksgiving and Christmas. But throughout the year, we're not advertising that. But on our website, there's a back end that allows us to be able to send that link out to our family clients, as well as also for them to send it out to others as well. On the other side of this is, of course, like we said, we overhauled. But then what we did is we then did a huge SEO update on our site as well. So we went through each page and we heavily branded the SEO. So we made sure that it spoke to the voice and the brand voice of what we wanted and what we wanted our clients to see and feel. Whether that was headshots, whether that was storytelling, whether that was documentary, whether that was events, that's all that our SEO was built around. And then the last thing that we did was we made sure that our voice spoke that. So when we're on social media, that's what we speak. When we're talking to people and they're asking us what we capture, that's what we speak. And that is really the biggest things that I did when it came to pivoting. I will say this idea came because probably about 7 years ago, I took a shift from photography to videography. So much so, a lot of people forgot that I still did photography, but I went full in branding, fully being a videographer, meaning as if people did not even know that I did photography. And this idea of making that pivot was I was then known as a videographer that was based in the Dallas Metroplex. That was a win for me. I received a lot of business, a lot of clients from that. Then the last thing that I did when it came to the pivot into the corporate space was um, honestly, I had a mindset shift. I had to recognize that um, being on the road was a lot, and it still is a lot, but also losing your weekends. And so, having children, I had to realize this: how are you going to balance growing children, having a family of your wife and yourself, being able to go on dates during the weekends, and also being able to still manage and build a business the way that we are. And so in doing that, I really doubled down on saying that I wanted my weekends back. And that was the biggest thing. And so in the corporate space, definitely when you're shooting events, you may lose your weekends maybe once or twice a month. However, in the wedding space, you lose that weekend every single weekend, especially if you were as good as we were. And so, in doing that, it's how do you pivot and how do you make that change? And I think the biggest first step I would say is just try it. Try it. So look at your website and ask yourself, does it speak to what I want it to speak to? Look at your social media pages and say, does it speak to what I want people to know that I do? Look at how you brand and market yourself, such as your logo, such as who you are, and ask, does it speak to what I want? Do I suggest that everyone should do corporate? No, I don't. I believe that wedding photographers and wedding videographers are very important. Do I believe that everything that we do has a aging limit? Absolutely. Because I think that there's a certain moment, a certain season that you still have to start pivoting away. And so with all of this, I just encourage as you continue to build and as you continue to work through your business, recognize the areas of what you want. Ask yourself, what does that goal look like? Because I can tell you, it's not an overnight wonder. When we made this pivot, definitely into the corporate space, business was slow. As you saw in the last video, I talk about the no's. I talk about the heavy disappointments, and that's okay. Weddings is more redundant. You know, you're going in, you're shooting, you're doing, and you're going to go get another one. You may meet five potential clients at that wedding, or you may meet a friend group at that wedding. That's not always the case in the corporate space. Your corporate space and your name becomes more recognizable as people share how well you did for them and their clients. And then, of course, they may talk to someone else and they say, hey, you did work for them. Would you be able to do work for us? Also, understanding that you got to go find that business. The business is not going to find you. And so I tell you all often, definitely as we're working and as we're talking about our business, no matter if you're a photographer, videographer, or if you're just another business and you stumble across this video, you got to go look for it. Meaning you got to go ask people. You got to go do some guerrilla marketing. You got to go send some emails. You have to make sure that you are putting in the energy. And I can tell you every single day, I have my cadence, especially in the corporate space. But we'll stay tuned to that for the next video. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed what you heard for today's video. My goal and my process right now is to do as much of these as possible. Get your thoughts, get your feedback. Tell me how you're pivoting. Tell me what you're pivoting and trying to get more into. If you're wanting to say, I want to be a jack of all trades, that's fine. But let's talk through it. Let's figure out what makes sense. Meaning, is your price structure set as a jack of all trades? Is your cadence set as a jack of all trades? Do you understand what your seasons will look like from there? With all that being said, hey, it's your boy Des. Let's continue to keep talking business.
Here to show up and show out. Here to show up and show out. What? Here to show up and show out. Here to show up and show out. Yeah.